Welcome everyone to the ANA eLearning Academy. We're so glad everybody can come back to join us after the little break that we have taken. Today we're going to have Michael Kodysz present on digital image editing for Numismatics. So I will turn it over to him in just a minute. For those that are brand new to the I will have the chat feature open here in Zoom, so send in your questions and comments that way. They'll come to me and then I will give them to Michael to answer at the end of the presentation. We cannot hear or see you, so please use that chat function there. And then at the end of the presentation here in Zoom, I will send out a poll, which is a survey that we'll use to let us know what you thought of the presentation. It's just 8 questions, very, very easy. So I hope you enjoy today. Again, if you have any questions, please use the chat or the Q&A feature here in Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Michael. Enjoy.
Okay. Hi there. So today we're going to have a 2-hour course. We'll try to time it about right. And the first part of it will be a lecture, which is going to be presented along with this PowerPoint. And then the second part of the course will be some live demos using Adobe Photoshop. So let's see, what does this course cover? We're going to learn the basics of digital image editing for collectors, dealers, authors, and researchers. While the course is geared primarily toward beginners, all experience levels are welcome. We're going to learn how to organize, edit, and modify coin and paper money images for the purposes of print and web publishing, cataloging, personal reference, and exhibiting. The topics we will go over are ethical guidelines, software options, basic file organization, formatting and image resolution, and some of the basic tools in Photoshop. I have some demonstrations planned for you. First of all, we'll take a look at some basic color correction. We'll look at basic retouching. We'll see how to remove a background from a coin image. We'll take an obverse and reverse and put those together, combine those into a seamless image, and an image where you take photos and you put them together is called a composite image. And if we have time, we can take a look at some other extra things like different background colors or drop shadows or reflections. So why should you watch this course? Skills in digital image editing are essential for anyone interested in digital numismatic photography. So if you are planning to take a summer seminar course, or if you have taken a summer seminar course, this course is complementary to the ones that I have listed here. So if you're interested in digital numismatic photography, then this is really a good complement to that. I wanted to tell you a little bit about me. You can see this very flattering photo of me that was included in the course catalog for the summer seminar a couple of years ago. That's me in the foreground with a handful of auction catalogs that I ended up never buying. This was at the book sale at the ANA in Colorado Springs at the library. I have 31 years as a graphic design professional. I've been doing digital image editing for 28 years. I've been an ancient coin collector for 20 years. That means a collector of ancient coins, not necessarily that I'm ancient, but I'm getting there. I've been an ANA member for 11 years, and I've been numismatic exhibiting for about 2 years. And great images are essential to illustrate, clarify, and sell. And I would like to make a little bit of an exception for the image right here. This is an image showing one of my exhibit cases, and I was using an iPhone. I was standing on a chair. I was in a convention hall where the lighting is something that you just can't control. And I'm also shooting through a glass case. So this is the best I could do, but I did want to show you an example of how I've used coin photography in an exhibit. So a practical use of coin photography and how important it is to the visual impact that the exhibit has. And this would go for any type of catalog or magazine article or website or any place that you're showing or discussing coin images. So why do I digitally edit coin images? There's a few reasons. Cleaning up and removing distractions, greater enlargement of details. You can save on disk space if you can, just basically crop an image and crop out any extra background that you don't need. And it saves layout space. So if we take a look at these images on the right, on the top are the original images taken with a 35mm camera. And on the below that are the images with the backgrounds cut out from their backgrounds and composited into a single image. And the width of these, the top and the bottom images are the same, but the bottom image is we can enlarge that quite a bit more in approximately the same amount of space. Okay, and to seamlessly integrate with text. It eliminates that boxy quality when there's always a box around your image. And it gives a neat professional look. So here's an example of a layout that I've done, just kind of my own personal coin catalog that I have created in HTML. So basically I have my coins cataloged on a web page with descriptions and images, and or on web pages, and it's not even something that I have live online at this point. It's a website that basically lives on my hard drive and I can refer to. So it gives kind of a professional look. Cutting out those images allows the coins to stand out, and a lot of boxes around the coins and various backgrounds would be very distracting. So before we even get into doing any image editing or even talking about any techniques or tools, I think we should take a look at some of the ethical considerations. And the basic question is it okay to alter or manipulate digital images? And for me, I'd say it depends. It depends on to what extent you're going to be altering these images and for what purpose. This is an image that most people would recognize, a Morgan dollar, and someone named Justin Lee, who is a numismatic photographer, was kind enough to let me use these images in this presentation. What he did for educational purposes is to show what would happen if somebody with great Photoshop skills and spent some time in Photoshop was to retouch a coin and get rid of a lot of the flaws of the coin, like a giant scratch across Liberty's cheek and various imperfections. It's quite a different coin, and so this is something that generally we're not going to want to do. And I'm sure that I probably don't have to tell most of you this. You probably would know this already. You don't want to alter a coin, digitally alter a coin in a way that would be deceptive. We wouldn't want to be a dealer that owns the coin on the left and then digitally alter it and sell it as the coin on the right. So this was done. I want to emphasize that Justin Lee did this for educational purposes only, and this was not done with the intent to actually deceive. So this is not what we're going to be going for. Something that is acceptable in general is to showcase a coin by placing it against a digitally generated background. Sometimes I've seen some high-end auction catalogs and some dealers that have very expensive coins and will put them on a background kind of like this with a reflection, kind of to give it sort of a exclusive feel to it. And I think in general this is accepted. We're not altering the surface of the coin at all. We're just placing it on a background. So this leads us to a question: is it acceptable to retouch the coin surface? And I say again, and this is my opinion only, that it depends. A dealer, it depends. And the examples I have here is, would it be a dealer photo and is the coin for sale? I would say probably not. I don't think you would want to alter or to retouch any imperfections out of the surface of a coin. Now, what if it was used to illustrate a magazine article? What if it was used just to represent an overall type? It's not, you're not selling this particular coin. You just want this to be kind of like you're doing an article about, British Virgin Island 25-cent pieces, and you want to show kind of like a, archetypical example, then it might be okay to retouch some little imperfections out of it. Some other circumstances that it would be acceptable to retouch a coin image, or removing a background is one way to clarify the contours of a coin, especially one that's unusually shaped or damaged like this one. So this coin has a gigantic cut through it, and it was in order to photograph it, it was placed on a support, and you can see the support underneath the cut, and it's really just impossible to photograph this without showing some of that support. So removing these kinds of objects I would say, would be desirable. They can be confusing if you leave them in there. Is that part of the coin, or what is that? So also what I'm showing here is the coin has also been rotated so that it's level. And in the original images, the coin had been rotated to catch the light in a certain way, so it wasn't necessarily square to the image frame. So also in this image, there's a little kind of a subtle drop shadow, little shadow to give it some dimension or make it seem like it's sitting on a surface. So I think things like this are okay in general. That you really aren't trying to deceive. You're not altering the surface of the coin. You're showing all of the edges so that people understand what this coin looks like. So I think this is a good reason to do some coin retouching or some digital retouching. Another thing that we need to consider is that most digital images in general, most digital coin images, but most digital images in general are going to need some basic color corrections. Every brand of camera is going to be a little bit, maybe lean toward a little bit of a red cast or a blue cast or a green cast or whatever. So we want to make the coin look as accurate in terms of color as possible. Some minor sharpening as well. Most digital images do need a little bit of minor sharpening. We don't want to go overboard with that though. Cropping and rotating, as I mentioned before, rotating a coin so that it's level. And then removal or the cleanup of the background, as we also just talked about. The coin that I'm showing right here, the original images weren't lit very well. What do I want to call it? The exposure isn't very good. It's just not a very good image. And so doing some color correcting, I would say it looks, the bottom version, after it's been color corrected, looks more true to the way the actual coin looks than the photographs. So and sometimes we want them to look a little bit more lifelike. We do need to do some of these color corrections. And here's what I got a little bit ahead of myself. Here's what I say. I say, in this example, the digitally color corrected image more accurately reflects the true look of the coin, whereas the original image is deceptive. So we want to consider this very carefully. Is minor retouching of a coin's surface okay? And I say, again, my opinion is that it's probably okay for collectors and consumer websites or publications. It's probably not okay for dealers, auction houses, or academics. My personal position on this is that as a collector, I have retouched small particles or fibers that can be physically removed from the coin surface. But as an auction cataloger, and I did not mention that about my background, I did do some auction cataloging. I worked in the fine art industry for a while. I ran an online auction with antique, fine and decorative art objects, and I never retouched a photo. I always wanted to bring flaws to attention. I would take photos of any kind of flaw or scratch or whatever, just so that I'm not misrepresenting the item and people knew what they were bidding on and what they were getting, because I didn't want any negative consequences of misrepresenting an item. So let's start talking about some software options. I'm going to just be talking about Adobe products, and I don't represent Adobe, and I don't get any kickback from Adobe. It's just that Adobe is the standard. There are some other options if you go look around that I'm just not going to cover. Like there's a freeware knockoff of Adobe Photoshop called GIMP, and that's something that you can. It's just not something I'm going to go over right now. We'll just talk about Adobe products. Most of you, if you are not a professional photographer or designer, you may have Photoshop. You may have a version of it called Elements, which is a kind of a little bit of a pared down version or pared down from the professional version. And I'm showing the workspace, the way a typical workspace for Elements looks on the left-hand side. And then I'm showing a typical workspace for Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud, how that looks on the right. And essentially, they're going to have the same basic tools. The stuff that I'm going to show you a little bit later when I demo, it's going to be pretty much the same. I'm going to be using Adobe Photoshop Creative Cloud version because that's what I own. That's what I'm used to. But if you are using Elements, you're going to find that there's pretty much the same tools, even they might be in a slightly different location, or the interface might look a little bit different. So just for example, you'll have layers, and I'm circling that with my mouse. There's the layers panel in Elements, and in my Photoshop workspace, layers are over here. You're going to have the same basic tools. It's just that the toolbar might be configured a little bit differently. The tools might look slightly different, but basically you'll be able to do the same thing in Elements that I'm going to be showing you in Photoshop. Photoshop Elements is right now on Amazon. You can get Photoshop Elements for $59.99, which seems like a really good price because normally it's $99.99. And I know that this seminar is being recorded, so anybody who in the future, like a year or two from now, who's listening to this, you're going to want to research prices because they're probably not going to be the same. But that's how it stands right now. You can get a 30-day free trial with an adobe.com account, so you'd want to go to adobe.com and establish an account. So that's a good way to try things out before buying anything. With Photoshop Elements, you're purchasing it one time, and then you own it. It's a single user license, which means you can only install it on one computer. So if you want to install it on another computer, you have to buy, you have to buy a second one. But it is available for Mac and PC. Photoshop CC, and CC stands for Creative Cloud. There are individual, commercial, and student and teacher plans. The most basic one that I was able to find was $9.99 a month. So it's a subscription service. It's not, you're not purchasing the software outright. You're basically purchasing a subscription to get access, monthly access to the software. Photoshop and Lightroom come as a package for $9.99 a month. You have a 30-day free trial as well. A 1-year subscription is the minimum. So like you can't just buy a month of it and then cancel your subscription. They require that you subscribe for a minimum of a year. You're able to install it on up to 2 devices, and again, Mac or PC. So I mentioned Lightroom here, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. The thing is that there are lots of choices. If you go to the Adobe website, you'll see that there are quite a few different options for subscriptions with different combinations of software. There's, as I mentioned, there's an individual business, student and teachers, you know, there's all kinds of things here. So I think that the best thing is for you to research your options, decide what's best for you, and then go with that. But I just wanted to make you aware of some of the basic options, or maybe the easiest ways that you can get started. And if I go back, also I do have the web page address here, so that if you you can find that. Okay, so I mentioned something called Adobe Lightroom. We are not going to be using Lightroom today. I'm not going to be demonstrating in Lightroom, but I do want you to be aware of it. Also, I'm assuming that most of you are beginners, but maybe there's some professional photographers out there that are tuning in. So I don't want to not mention Lightroom. Lightroom is something that's complementary to Photoshop, and you can do some color correcting in Lightroom. And what you can do in Lightroom is called non-destructive color correcting. So basically what that means is that when you're color correcting an image, but you're not altering the pixels in that image, so it's not a permanent thing. So you can remove the color corrections that you've done, or you can make adjustments to them, but you're not destroying or altering the original image. So that's an advantage of Lightroom. You can do some simple retouching. You can import, organize, manage, and find images, but it is not for compositing or for advanced retouching. So it's kind of some of the basic things you can do probably more efficiently than in Photoshop, but again, we're just going to be working in Photoshop for this seminar. Another software tool that's available that's complementary to Photoshop is called Adobe Bridge, and that is included with the Adobe photography plan. That's $20.99 a month, and that gives you 1 terabyte of storage versus I think that the $9.99 one that I showed earlier, that gives you 20 gigabytes of storage. So basically it's an upgraded plan, and you get Adobe Bridge access as well. And this screenshot is showing you that it's a file browser, file management system. You can add ratings to your photos, labels to your photos. There's image previews. You can add keywords and copyright information. And you can also filter the images to create collections. So it's a really great file management system, and if you're a professional photographer or you have, you know, hundreds or thousands of images, that this is something to look into. I just want to go over some file management tips. Everybody's going to have different needs. An individual collector is going to have probably vastly different needs than a major auction house like like Heritage or something. So I'm just going to give you some basic tips from the standpoint of myself as a collector with quite a few images. I mentioned before that I mainly collect ancient coins, so you'll see this illustration or this image that I have here showing how my folders and files are set up. I have them named by, organized by the emperor's name. And then under the emperor's name, I have a subfolders where the coin images are organized by mint, by the name of the mint. So I think that's a good idea to organize your images into folders and subfolders. And if you're I'm a Mac user mainly, but if you're a PC user, you might be used to calling them directories and subdirectories, but it's the same thing. I recommend developing a naming convention that should be logical, descriptive, flexible, and consistent. So here is my file naming convention. I have descriptive file names that facilitate organization and searching. So you can see that I've got a whole list of coin images here, and there's some order to the way that I have these. It's not just random naming, but you know, the beginning of each file name. Let's see if I go to the next slide. Here we go. Okay, so I'm breaking down the system that I've developed for myself in order to name these files as descriptively as possible, so that if I'm you know, searching for a particular image, I can find it pretty quickly. I've got the abbreviated emperor's name first. I've got a 3-digit catalog reference number. So, you know, that's kind of important. So if you have, I'm using something called Roman silver coins. This is their cataloging system. And if the numbers go into the hundreds, then I want to make sure that even my even any catalog number that is a single digit or double digit, I want to make sure that I have 3 digits total. I want to put the 0 in front so that in a list view, these all fall into the correct order. All right, so if there's anything like this particular coin is a variant of something that's in the catalog, so I'm indicating that with a little abbreviation. The year that I acquired it comes next. The month and the day is after that. Acquisition sequence for date. What I mean by that is if I bought 3 coins on the same date, then I number them one, you know, coin number 1, coin number 2, coin number 3. And then the little V after that indicates a vertically oriented image. And if you look at that little preview icon, you can see that I have the coin obverse and reverse, you know, on top of each other or stacked on top of each other. I'm calling that a vertically oriented image because I have other images that are oriented horizontally of the same coin. So this is for this is for a web page. And when you click on the image to enlarge it, then you get an enlarged version which is horizontally oriented. So for those, I would have an H instead of a V. And then we have a file extension. So after the period, there's a JPEG, and that just indicates the file type. What's really important is that your file names should only contain letters, numbers, underscores, or dashes. And if these files are for the web, then you want to make sure that you're using only lowercase letters, because uppercase letters are not compatible with HTML formatting. So just use lowercase letters. And then you also want no spaces or special characters. And I'm not going to try to read all of these, but you can see you basically just want dashes or underscores and letters and numbers, and that's it. So no spaces between, no spaces in your file names. Okay, so there is no single one-size-fits-all solution. I'm just showing you a solution that I arrived at, which meets my purposes. And the solution you develop depends on your specific needs and preferences. And I mentioned the H for horizontally oriented image. You can see the preview image, how the coins are next to each other. So again, that's just a little code for myself, and that's something that I developed, H and V for horizontal and vertical. Also, you'll notice the different file extensions, which indicate different file types. So JPEG is a standard format for the web, but PSD indicates that it's a Photoshop document, and you can see that the file size is much larger because that is a layered file. It preserves the different layers, and every time you add a layer to an image, you're going to increase the file size. So I preserve that, I save that PSD layered image in case I need to go back and make changes, which I can then save out again as a JPEG. Just a few things about file formats. JPEG is the web standard for continuous tone photographic images such as coins. JPEG is a lossy format. It means that it's a compressed file which loses data to reduce the file size. So that's something to be aware of. I'm not going to go into technical things. It's just not, it's a little bit beyond the scope of what we're doing here, but I wanted you to be aware of the different file types, and some are for print only, some are for web, some are for both. So JPEG for web, photographic images is the standard. All right, one advantage of a JPEG, you do lose some data, which means your JPEG images typically aren't as great a quality as like a non-lossy file type, but it takes, they're smaller file size, and they take web pages less time to load. And it's always a good idea to save the lossless original in a PSD or TIFF format. Let's consider a few other things that we need to think about. Image resolution. 72 ppi is web and screen standard, because web and, I mean, screens, TV screens, computer screens, any kind of electronic device is a 72. The resolution of those are 72. So PPI means pixels per inch. It's standard for the web, 72 pixels per inch. 300 is standard for print. You can go from high resolution to low resolution, but it's not usually advised to go from low resolution to high resolution. So you can take data away and preserve the quality of not lose any image. You can take data away, but you can't add data where there wasn't any. You can change resolution within Photoshop. Something else we need to think about as well is the color mode. So red, green, and blue, called RGB, is standard also for web and screen and electronic devices, whereas cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is called CMYK, is what we use to design for print. Something we need to consider is that CMYK has 4 channels, whereas RGB has 3, and 4 channels makes for a larger file than 3 channels. Color mode can be changed within Photoshop, just like image resolution. But if we're designing just for the web, we don't want to save our images as CMYK, because it just, the file is going to be larger, and there's some other reasons why that we're not going to get into as well. You just want to make sure that you're in the correct color mode for what you're doing. We can also take a look at something called bit depth. That's kind of important. An 8-bit pixel can display 256 hues each of red, green, and blue, whereas a 16-bit pixel can display 65,000 plus hues of red, green, and blue. And if we are doing some image editing and we're moving pixels around, it's generally advised to do that with a 16-bit image rather than an 8-bit image. A 16-bit image and an 8-bit image are going to look pretty much, they're going to look about the same. If we look at the original image, they're going to look about the same on screen. But if we start to mess with some of the settings, like if we adjust the levels and we're in 8-bit, we're going to have this kind of banded effect, because there's just not enough, there's only 256 hues here, so it doesn't make for a smooth transition from one gray to another, whereas if we go to 16-bit and we adjust the level, it's going to be very smooth. So a 16-bit image is going to double the file size, so it's going to make the file size really large. If you're shooting from a digital camera, if you shoot your image in RAW format rather than JPEG, RAW format is going to be in 16-bit and JPEG is going to be in 8-bit. If you are shooting in JPEG, you can, before you edit your images, you can change to 16-bit. And then when you save out as a JPEG, it will go back to 8-bit. Again, this is maybe getting a little bit too technical for us, but I did want you to be aware of this sort of thing. Something else we need to be aware of, especially if you've never used Photoshop before. There's something called a scratch disk. Scratch disk is free space for temporary storage while Photoshop is running. So Photoshop basically needs a certain amount of empty hard drive space in order to read and write, or just to run properly. And I recommend that you buy an external solid state drive to use as a dedicated scratch disk, just an empty drive that you can plug in when you're using Photoshop. And you can select in the Photoshop preferences, you can choose the scratch disks. And the way this, these are my disks that I have hooked up. And this is the largest disk, with the most free space. And I have that. You can rearrange the order of these, which is the first one it's going to use as a scratch disk. And then if it runs out of space on there, which is the second, and so on. There's so much space on the Septimius drive. I named it after an emperor, of course. So on my Septimius drive, that it's not really ever going to need to go and start using space on the gated drive, but they're just there in that order like that. So the recommended minimum size is 60 gigabytes for a scratch disk. So if you don't have enough scratch disk space, you could get a message like this, and this is always a scary message to get. You go to open up Photoshop and it's not going to open because it just isn't going to be able to function. So to avoid that, just be aware of scratch disk, make sure you've got some free space, and in the Photoshop preferences, set the scratch disk you want it to use. Something else to take a look at, to think about, is cursor settings. So when you buy Photoshop or you open it up for the first time, the little, if you go to use the paintbrush tool, for example, it's going to look like a little paintbrush, like a little cartoon paintbrush. Or if you use an eyedropper tool, it's going to look like a little eyedropper. And I kind of find that a little bit distracting. I'd rather use something called a precise brush tip. So you can go to in preferences again, from standard to precise. And when you choose precise, instead of a little silly little icon, you're going to have something like a little target or an X or something that's a little, that you can be more precise with than trying to play with a little brush. For painting cursors, I just leave it on normal brush tip. What that does is it shows the number, it shows the diameter of the brush, so the diameter in pixels of the brush, and I find that to be really helpful. And when we get into when I get into doing the demos, you'll see how useful that is. Okay, but again, you can change these within the Photoshop preferences. So we're going to get ready to start. I want you to know what system I'm using. I'm working on a Mac. It's a laptop with a 15-inch monitor, 16 gigabytes of memory, of RAM. So, I don't have a really super expensive setup here to be able to do this kind of stuff. And I'm going to be using Photoshop CC, the 2020 version. So again, if you're using Elements or a different version of Photoshop, then things might look a little bit different than what I show you, but you should be able to do the same things, the tools, find the same tools, the same windows and palettes and things that I'm using. You might just have to hunt around for those a little bit. All right, and again, just to remind you, the demonstrations that I have planned, we're going to start out doing some basic color correcting. We're going to do some basic retouching. We're going to remove some backgrounds. We're going to create seamless composite images with the obverse and reverse in the same image. And then if there's time, I can show you some other stuff. Okay, so let's see. I think we're about ready to start demoing. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Photoshop. And I wanted to open it up, just open it up. I don't have it open already. I just wanted to see how long it takes to open. One thing to let you know, though, when I do the demo, I'm working on a Mac, and if I say, like, press the Command key, that's equivalent to the Control key on a PC. So instead of, let's say, I say, you know, I'm hitting Command Z, for you it would be Control Z if you're on a PC. Okay, so this is how I have the workspace set up for my Photoshop. But if you were to open up Photoshop for the very first time, actually, I'm going to close out of PowerPoint just to save a little bit of RAM here. Okay, so let's get back to it. Okay, so here's the workspace. This is how I have it set up. If I was opening Photoshop for the first time, my workspace would look something like this. And what I like to do is I like to get rid of all this stuff. I mean, we're not going to be using color libraries or any of this stuff today, so I am going to just close this up. I'm going to just kind of try to minimize this little toolbar as much as possible. Got stuck there. There we go. Okay, so I'm closing that up. Before we start, what I want to do is just find my layers panel, and I'm going to drag that away because I want that to be a floating window. If I leave this as a floating window, it will stay open, and it'll be there when I need it. I want my history, so I'm going to drag that away as well, and I'm going to place that inside of this little window here so that I have these tabs that I can flip back and forth. And then I also want something called, here we go, let's see, something called the Actions window. And I'm going to put that in here as well. So now I have this floating window with actions, with history, with layers. All right. Also, what else? Preferences, I just want to mention where the preferences are. I mentioned that you can change or adjust your scratch discs or choose a scratch disc. You can change the cursor. So here it is from standard, which like here looks like a little eyedropper, to precise. Again, I recommend using precise, but it just, that's my, that's my preference. All right, so let's go ahead and just start on the first demo. I am going to drag this over to my desktop. I have a little folder here. I'm going to open it up, and let's take a look at what we're going to go for here. So what I'm going to do is demo on some images of ancient coins. Got a separate image for the obverse and reverse. I've already cropped them though, so they're square. On these, the color doesn't look very good. I showed you this on the slide earlier. Not very good lighting or exposure, so we're going to do some color corrections to make it look a little bit nicer. We're going to remove the background, and then we're going to make a composite image where the background, or the obverse and the reverse are inside, are part of the same image. So let's open these up. Okay, let me start with the obverse. First thing I'm going to do is check the, I mentioned to you before that we should take a look at the color mode. So we have an RGB image, which is fine. We're just going to leave it as RGB. We're going to assume this is something that's for the web, but you can see that you can change or select different color modes if you needed to. If you're doing this for print, then select CMYK. And right now, this is a, oops, where am I here? Okay. Let's go ahead and change this to a 16-bit. It does double our file size, but I want to do it. I just want to show you that, this really is the proper way to edit images, is in 16-bit. And I'm going to go ahead and do that in this other one as well before I forget. So we've converted both of these to 16-bit. Actually, let me Command Z. I'm going to undo that. Look at down here at the bottom of the screen. You can see the the file size is 6.68 megabytes. That's at 8-bit. When I change it to 16 bits, it doubles in size. So we do want to be aware of the size of our files. All right, so let me go back to this obverse image. We've changed it to 16-bit. We've made sure that it's RGB. In my layers panel, it comes in as a background layer, which is locked. On a locked layer, you can't really do much to that. It means that you just can't, we can't like remove the background or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is just drag down and make a copy of that background layer. So this is the layer that we're going to work on. We're going to preserve our background layer. We're going to preserve the original. So let me just rename that original. And then let me rename this background layer. I'll name it obverse. And it is a good practice or a good habit to get into to rename your layers in a descriptive way. And something else I'm going to do is just make a new layer. So I'm just going to click on the create new layer. And let's name this background. So we're going to actually create a new background for this image. All right. So I'm going to turn off the original as well. So basically, if you've never used Photoshop before, the layer panel, there's a little eye icon here next to these layers, which means that you can toggle the visibility of these on and off. So if I if I click on this little eye and it disappears, that means this layer here is invisible. So if I do the same thing with this obverse layer, and let me do something here. Panel options, I'm going to make these icons larger so that you can see it better. All right, there we go. Okay, so if I just toggle that so that it's invisible, you can see, hey, there's nothing there. You do see this thing called this checkerboard pattern, but all that means is that there is no color information on any of these pixels. Essentially what we have is a transparent image, and that I have no color information on this background image, and that's what we're seeing right now. That's visible. The background image is empty of any colors. It's basically transparent. Okay, so we're back to our obverse. I have selected that. I'm going to go ahead and do just some basic sharpening on this. So I'm going to go to the filter menu and go to sharpen and choose unsharp mask. And now the settings that I have are pretty much the settings that I would use. There's a little preview image here, and if I click on that preview image, you can see the original sharpness. And if I let go, you can see the preview of how it's going to sharpen it. So for a coin image, I think we're just going to want to do it very subtly. Radius of like 1.5 pixels or 2 pixels should be enough for an image this size. So I'm clicking on this, and you can see it shows the original. It's a little bit hazy, and if I let go, you can see that it sharpens it a bit. If I was to increase the radius like really crazy, you can see that it's over sharpened and it doesn't look realistic. And you don't want to do anything like that. You don't want to over sharpen it. You don't want to misrepresent what the coin looks like. You just want to just correct a little bit of that original image, the camera lens, for you know, any haziness or whatever that is in the original image. So with that 1.5 pixels, I'm going to hit OK. Now what we could do is under image, we can just do some auto corrections. So again, this is just a basic class, and if you're a professional photographer and you're sitting in on this, and you're probably going to be doing more advanced subtle stuff. But I'm just going to do sort of a quick way to fix a not an ideal image like we're working with now. I'm just going to do auto tone, auto contrast, auto color. And then what I might do is check out some of these adjustments, and there's all kinds of adjustments that you can do. I might just do a levels adjustment. And again, we can go in here and we can manually adjust the levels by choosing these little sliders. But just for the purposes of demo and just for starting out, let's just do a preset and let's make this image a little bit lighter. And let's adjust the curves and make that a little bit lighter. All right, and now we can see the difference between the original and what we've got. And honestly, I think this looks a little bit more like it would look in hand. It looks a little bit more true to life. All right, so having done all that, let's take a look at our history, and we can see all these different actions that we've taken on this image. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to where it says unsharp mask, and I'm going to delete that. So basically, I'm deleting all the adjustments that I just did because I want to show you something. We did all these manually, step by step, but there is a way to automate this so that we can create a single action that will do all these adjustments. So let's say we have 100 images or 20 images, 50 images, 100, 1,000 images that need the same kind of adjustments. We don't have to manually do every single one of these actions one by one. We can set up some automation for that. So I want to show you how to do that. I have this little actions tab here, and I'm going to create a new set, and we'll just call this, for the purposes of demo, I'll just call it demo set. How's that sound? And then inside that set, we're going to create a new action, and I'll call that demo action. All right, and then that is going to start recording my actions. So there's a little red record button. So from this point, I'm going to redo the actions that I just did, and they should be recorded by Photoshop and placed inside of this little demo action that I created. So let me go ahead and do the unsharp mask. Oops, let me go back to layers. I do have to select, so here's something. I'm on my background layer. I can see I have it selected because it's gray. I selected my background layer, and I really want to make these adjustments on the obverse. So let me select that. And then we can get started. Okay, so I'm going to go to unsharp mask. I'm going to go to auto tone, auto contrast, auto color. Let's do levels. We'll make that lighter. And let's do curves and make that lighter. And again, there are many other adjustments that you can do. We're just doing something basic just to get you started. All right, let me go back to actions and let me stop the recording. And you can see that under this demo action, it just recorded all the things that I did. If I go over to my reverse image, and let me do something first. Let's make a new layer first of all. Before I apply that action, I'm going to go ahead and make a layer, and I'll call it reverse. So I'm setting this file up the same way I did the other one. This is original. All right, selecting the reverse layer, go back to actions, choose play, and what did it do? It didn't work. What did I not do right? So maybe I didn't set this up right. Uh-oh. Okay, so there's a little glitch here. When I practiced this, it worked perfectly. So no, it's not working. Okay, well, I did something wrong, and let me try it again. Let me delete this. Let's just do demo set again. Let's create our action, demo action, demo actions. All right, and let me record this. So I'm just going to do this from scratch again, but let me see if my action will record. So we'll do unsharp mask, We'll do auto tone, auto contrast, auto color, and do our levels adjustment. Do our curves adjustment. And then let's hit stop. All right, and then if I was to undo all these, let's see what happens if I select my demo set. I'm going to select my action and hit play. There we go. Okay, so I got it this time. I'm not sure what I did wrong the first time, but we got it. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's go back to our obverse. Something else that we could do is we could level this out. So maybe this coin wasn't placed perfectly level or straight up and down in the camera frame. So if I'm in my crop tool, so right now I have my crop tool selected and I'm on my obverse layer and I hold the command key. I think on PC it would be control, and I get this little, what looks like a little level, that icon that shows up, and I click and drag to, like, it draws out a line which is going to, it's going to rotate the image so that this line becomes level. So let's see. There we go. Okay, so I was able to get it so that the face was, I went from the forehead to the chin, and the face is now looking straight horizontal. Let me show you that again because I don't know how clear I was. I'm in the crop tool. I'm going to hit command, hold command key, click and drag, let go, double click, and now it's leveled. Let me do the same for this. The point that I'm going to use as the level is going to be this base on this figure. So I'm going to hold the command key. I'm going to click and drag across this base because that's what I want to be level. And it's actually pretty close. You can see it's a little bit off. Double click and it levels that out. Okay, so that's sort of important for when you're doing a composite image. You want your images to be not lopsided or crooked or whatever. All right, so now what we can do is we can, we're going to remove the background from this coin. And since this is an ancient coin, there's an irregular background here. So I'm going to use a tool called the Magic Wand tool. Magic Wand tool will, when I click on pixels in the background, it's going to select an area, and the amount of area or the number of pixels that it selects depends on a tolerance. So when I click on a pixel, let's say I'm clicking on a gray pixel, if I have the tolerance set at 20, that means it's going to select a range of 20 pixels, lighter or darker than the particular pixel that I selected. So there's some little areas in here that are not selected, as you can see. So the selection is indicated by this sort of moving dashed line, and that's called marching ants. That's just kind of the name that designers, photographers call it, marching ants. You can see that there's some marching ants in, like, within this selection, and that indicates pixels that were either too dark or too light. They were outside of our tolerance range. I'm going to deselect for a moment. You could say, well, you want to pick up all of those pixels, so let's just increase our tolerance range to something like 100, you know, and that'll pick up more pixels. But when we do that, actually, hey, that actually worked out pretty well. Some images, well, let me do something even crazier. Let me do like 300 so you can see what the point that I'm trying to make. Oh, 255 is the max. Okay. If I do 255, actually 255, it picked up the entire thing, even all the pixels inside the coin. Let me try something like 200. There we go. This is kind of what I'm trying to show you, is that if your tolerance range is too many pixels, you're going to end up picking up some of the pixels inside of the coin itself, and you're going to end up deleting part of the coin. So, whoops. So again, I'm going to go back down to like, why don't I go to like 30 pixels this time? And select the background. So you can see some of this darker shadow area isn't being picked up. It's not falling within the tolerance range. So if you can see, I know it might be hard to see, but if you look at where my cursor is down here, you can see a little plus symbol next to the crosshairs on my cursor. That means that if I click again, it's going to add my new selection to the previous selection. So I'm just going to click in this unselected area that I want to select. And there it's starting to add to my selection. And I'm clicking around trying to clean up any of these stray pixels that weren't selected, that fell outside of my tolerance range. And actually, I'm getting most of them. All right, so this really, it doesn't usually take me this long, but I'm trying to explain to you some of the ins and outs and show you some stuff. So this really isn't a difficult process or a time-consuming process, really. Okay, so I think this looks pretty good. There's a couple things down here, which what I'm going to do now, instead of trying to select with my magic wand and pick this really dark area up, I'm going to go to my marquee tool. I'm going to choose my elliptical marquee tool, and I'm going to hold the shift key so that I get that little plus sign. I'm going to drag a selection over that little bit that I want to add to the previous selection, and that'll get rid of that. And there's a couple little things along the edge that I can clean up here by doing the same thing. I'm just adding to my selection with the elliptical marquee tool. Maybe there's a couple things here. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. What I can do is just hit the delete key now, and my background disappears. And then if I hit Command D, I deselect, and now I have my coin image removed from the background. Let me go ahead and do the same thing for this reverse. I'm just going to go ahead and use my magic wand tool, add to my selection until I get the entire background. If there are any stubborn pixels, I can use my marquee tool, hold the shift key to get the little plus symbol so that as I select, I'm adding to my previous selection. And along the shadow edge, there may be just a few bits of the background that I want to select. Okay, so there we go. See, that's how quick it can be. And then just hit delete. Oops. And what we're seeing now is we're just seeing the original behind it because I didn't hide that. If I toggle the visibility on that, we can see that we have transparent pixels. We have eliminated the background behind this coin. So now what we can do is we can composite this. I want to add the reverse image to the obverse image so that we have a single image. I'm going to increase the size of the canvas so that I make room for that the reverse image. So I'm going to go to the image menu, go to canvas size. I want to increase the width, and I'm going to use the percentage. I'm just going to add. I'm going to double the size. I'm going to add 200%, or add another 100% to the width, and I want that canvas area to be added to the right-hand side, so I'm going to anchor my canvas to the left. And then I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. So now I've got room to drag my reverse image onto this one. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag this, this little tab away so that I have a floating window. And I'm going to go to my Move tool. I want to make sure that I have my reverse layer selected with the coin image on it. I'm going to hold the Shift key as I drag. I'm going to, holding the Shift key, I'm going to click and drag over so that my mouse is hovering over this obverse image, and then just let go. And holding the shift key allows this image to drag directly in the center. And actually what's happening here is I do have some little stray pixel off of that I didn't pick up. And that's why my coin image is off center. But normally it should be centered. Okay, and then what I can do is just drag this over. I noticed that, you know, if you look at some dealer or auction catalogs, sometimes to save image size, they'll bump these right up against each other, but I really don't like that. I like to leave a little bit of a breathing room for these coins so you can see the edges. So what I'm doing as well, and this is worth me showing you, I think, is as I move this image around from left to right, I'm holding the shift key. What the shift key does is it locks this along a like a horizontal axis as I'm moving it. So for example, if I let go of the shift key, I can move this around, and it's not locked to a horizontal, meaning that like I can drag this around and maybe it ends up down here because I'm not very precise with my mouse. But if I hold the shift key, let's align this again. If I hold the shift key as I drag, it's dragging perfectly horizontal. So I don't have to worry about it going, you know, accidentally moving up or down a little bit. Okay, so there we go. Let me crop this because I've got a little bit of extra canvas space. So I'm in the crop tool, and all I'm doing is just clicking and dragging a crop frame over the image, and I can adjust where I want that image to crop. You can see there's kind of a little preview of what it's grayed out where I would be cropping. So I can adjust the size of this image. And if I double click, it'll accept that crop, and that would be pretty close to my final image. But what I do want to do is add a white background. I did make a background layer a while ago. If I select the background layer and I hit Command A, that will select all. So it selects all the pixels on this background layer. If I go to Edit and Fill and choose white for my fill color and hit OK, and then if I hit Command D to deselect, now I have my composite image with a white background. So what I probably should have done earlier is I probably should have saved, because one thing you don't want to do is go through, you know, spend a lot of time on an image and then something happens and the electricity goes out or something like that and you lose it. So let's go ahead and save. I'm going to go to Save As. I'm just going to name this, how about, I don't know, Demo 1. And we see that it's a PSD format, which means it's going to preserve our layers, which is, I think, it's smart to do that. It's smart to preserve your layered file so that in case you want to go back and do any more edits, that you've got your layers and it's easy to do. Let's hit Save. And then I'm going to create a JPEG. So we notice that our image is, we converted that to 16 bits a while ago. JPEGs only accept 8-bit format. So if I do a Save As, oh, you know, another thing we should look at, let's look at the image size. You know, one thing I want to adjust first of all, I want to adjust the resolution. I forgot to take a look at this earlier. 180 is kind of an odd size resolution, but it has more pixel information than a 72 pixel per inch JPEG. So, but we are saving a JPEG for the web, and 72 is the standard resolution. So let's change the resolution to 72 pixels, and actually you could see how much smaller this file size is. It was 25 megs, now it's 4 megs. Okay, so let's change our resolution to 72, and then go ahead and save as. Let's save as JPEG. Let's hit save. We want the maximum image quality, which is 12. Hit OK. And I'm going to go ahead and close out of my PSD file. We don't need this, so I'm going to close out of that. And I want to take a look at my JPEG. So here's my JPEG. You can see it's 678K versus my PSD file, which is 10.4 megs. Let's just open it up and take a look. There it is, ready for the web. All right, let's move on to the next demo. Let's take a look inside of this folder. Let's see what we're going to do here. So now we have a modern coin. What we're going to do is we're going to create a composite image. So let's see what our coins, well, here, let me just go ahead and open these up in Photoshop. Okay, so we've got two coin images, an obverse and a reverse with a black background. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the background so that we can place this on a white background and create a composite image. Before we do that, though, we're going to do a little bit of basic retouching. So let's take a look at these images. Before we start, though, let's go to the mode. We're in RGB color mode. Let's change to 16 bits. 16 bits, there we go. And let's see, let me zoom in. We zoom in, I mean, from a distance, this looks like a pretty, almost perfect coin, but as we zoom in, you can see there's some flaws on here. There's some like little fiber sticking to the coin. There's some little pieces of dust. There's some other imperfections on this coin. And as we discussed in the lecture, in terms of ethical considerations, if this was a coin that was for sale, I think that I would want to leave it alone. Or maybe I'd want to remove this, somehow gently remove this fiber and then rephotograph it if I don't want that on there. But let's say that this is a coin that's meant just for, let's say you have a newsletter and you've got an article that you're discussing these types of coins, and this is meant to illustrate that, just kind of to represent the type, the cover image or whatever. I think that it's okay to go ahead and do some retouching like this. Let's look at this reverse too, see what's going on with that. So there's a few little spots on this coin, little piece of dust here that we could see in the shadow. Let's go back to the obverse and let's take a look at that first. I'm going to show you something, probably the easiest way that you can do some basic retouching, you can get rid of these imperfections, is to use a tool called the spot healing brush. There are some other tools down here that will do some similar things. I don't want to get too into retouching. I just want to show you like kind of a quick and dirty way to do it. It doesn't require a ton of skill or a ton of practice. It's the spot healing brush. So if I select the spot healing brush, I get my brush, like my brush size icon. It turns into a circle, and this is showing the diameter in pixels of my brush. So my brush is fairly big for, if I'm going to work on this little fiber here, I've got a pretty big brush. I'm going to make it smaller. Up here you can see the brush size, it's 70. You can change the size in pixels by just typing in a number here. You can change the hardness, etc. I'll talk about the hardness a little bit later. But at 70 pixels, what I was going to say is, sorry, you could change this, like I could type in like 20 pixels or something like that, and it'll give me a smaller brush, which it just did. Another way to change the your brush size on the fly is by using the bracket keys on your keyboard. So if I want to make my brush size larger, I click on the right-hand bracket key, and every time I click on it, it gets a little bit bigger by 10 pixels, it looks like, 10 pixels at a time. If I want to make it smaller, I click the left-hand bracket and it makes it a little bit smaller. So what I'm going to do is use a brush size that's not too much larger than this fiber, and I'm going to click and drag over it. So basically I'm painting over the top of it, and then just let go of the mouse. And what Photoshop does is kind of magically makes that fiber disappear. What it's doing, it's using some kind of an algorithm to replace the pixels that I painted over with some other pixels from the background to just sort of blend it in. So if you want to quickly get rid of some like fibers and dust and things like that, then this is just a really easy tool to do that. I always recommend as well to zoom in as close as you can that's comfortable. Like I wouldn't want to be trying to retouch little fibers and pieces of dust from a view like this. What I'm doing is using a keyboard shortcut to use the zoom tool. So for me to zoom in, I'm holding the space bar and command and clicking and dragging, and I'm zooming in. And also if I want to move around the image, I'm pressing the space bar, I get this little hand icon, and I can move around the image like that. So I'm zooming in and out, moving around the image, and then I can start working on these little things, little imperfections, little dust pieces. All right, so you do not want to make again, the brush size larger than you need. If you make it too large, what you're doing is you're forcing Photoshop to fill in a larger area, and I think it doesn't. You don't want it to. You don't want to notice this. So if you let me actually show you. I'm going to do something kind of like really crazy here, just to give you an example. So let's say I make my brush really huge, and I'm using this spot healing brush, and I want to. I don't know, let's say I want to retouch this stuff right in here, right under her neck. It's taken Photoshop a long time okay, Photoshop took a while to process that, but look there's some kind of a weird thing that happened here. Photoshop was picking up pixels maybe from her shoulder or whatever, not from the background completely, and it's not right. So I'm just trying to illustrate for you the idea that you want to not use too large of a brush. If you're retouching small imperfections, then use a smaller brush. Just enough to cover the imperfection, the dust or the fiber or whatever that you're trying to get rid of. Okay, so this is really, for the most part, what I'm going to show you. There are other tools. There's a tool called the clone stamp tool, which is over here, which is another way that you can remove, you can do something similar to what the clone stamp, or to what the spot healing brush is doing, but you're doing it more manually. But I think that maybe that's just a little beyond the scope of what we're doing right now. Okay, so I am not going to retouch this entire image. I think you have the idea. If you had a coin like this, I think you could, let's just do that one, a couple more. You could get started with this and get a pretty good result. I think what we should do now, well, I did promise that I'd retouch a couple of these little dots too, right, on the reverse. So look how small I'm making my brush, because I don't want to pick up any pixels from the background in the shadow. See, that doesn't look so good. So sometimes, there we go. Okay, so I got a little bit off track, but what did I want to say? Now that we have our coin retouched, let's pretend that I've spent a lot of time retouching the obverse and the reverse of this coin. Let's go ahead and cut these backgrounds out. We're going to make a composite image here. I think I'll go ahead and I'm going to start with the obverse like we did with the last coin. And I'm going to go through some of the same steps as I did with the last coin. I'm going to make a copy of this background. We want to preserve our background, our original image, just in case we screw something up. We can always go back to the original. So we'll name this original. I'm going to name my layer, I'll name that obverse. let me go ahead and make a background. So if your background or if your new layer comes in a position that you don't want it, you can click and you can drag it to the position that you do. So my background layer, well, I'm going to call it background. It's going to be our new background. My new layer came in above the above my obverse layer, and I want it to go below that but above the original. So I'm just going to click and drag on that, drag that down until I see this double blue line, and that tells me that it's going to be positioned between these two layers. I'm just going to let go, and there it goes. So something to bear in mind, again, if you're a beginner with Photoshop, maybe you haven't used layers too much, if I want to create a new layer, the layer is going to come in above the layer that I have previously selected. So for example, if I have the obverse layer selected and I go to make a new layer, it's going to come in above my selected layer. So if I wanted my background to have come in, my new background layer that I'm going to create to come in above the original but below the obverse, then I should click the original, select that, make a new layer, and there it came in the right spot. So we'll call this background. So, okay. And right now there's nothing on the background. It's just, you can see by the little checkerboard pattern that it has no color information on it. It's basically a transparent layer. I'm going to hide my original or toggle the visibility so that it turns that off. So you can see if I hide my obverse layer, the one on top here, it looks like there's nothing there because everything's transparent. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the background or drag a selection in order for us to remove the background. And since we have a round coin here, a machined coin, it's very different than the irregular coin edge of the ancient coin. I'm going to use a different technique in order to separate the coin image itself from the background. I'm going to go to this marquee tool. And right now I have the elliptical marquee tool visible, but you do have a rectangular marquee tool as well. We're going to use the elliptical marquee tool. And what I am going to show you is a couple basic things about how to drag out an elliptical marquee. If I hold the Option key and I click and drag, my marquee, my ellipse, drags out from the center point. The point where I started, it drags out from that center. But as you can see, this is not perfectly round. It's more of an oval shape. It'd be very difficult for me by hand, using the mouse only, to ensure that I'm dragging out a perfect circle. So what I need to do if I want a perfect circle is, in addition to holding the Option key, I'm going to hold the Shift key. When I hold the Shift key, that locks my selection that I'm dragging out, or my marquee that I'm dragging out, to a perfect circle. Problem I have now is that, well, it's not centered on the coin, and I want to isolate the coin. I don't want to pick up any of the background. So in addition to this, so right now I've got my finger pressed on the Shift key and on the Option key. In addition to this, I'm going to press at the same time, without letting go of the Option and the Shift key, I'm going to press the space bar. The space bar allows me to drag the selection around. So what I can do is I can align this selection or marquee, I'll call it a selection, to the edge of the coin, let go of the space bar, still holding Option and Shift. I'm making the selection a little bit smaller. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of just like zeroing in on getting an edge here, or getting my selection to align with the edge of the coin. Now, the coin image itself is not perfectly circular. It may be that the camera was a little bit off level. It may be that the coin was not perfectly level on a surface, or some combination of the two. But I'm going to get as close as I can without picking up any of the background. Basically, I don't want to crop any of the coin image, or as little as possible, but I don't want to get any of the background. I think what I have is pretty good right here. Close, pretty darn close. So I'm just going to let go of the mouse button. I've released all of the keys, and now I have a selection around my coin. I want to make sure that I have the obverse layer selected. And then what I want to do is I want to delete the background. So if I just hit the delete key, you can see that I deleted the wrong thing. And the reason for this is that I made a selection around the coin. So anything inside that selection, when I hit the delete key, is going to be deleted. So in this case, what we need to do is go to the select menu and choose inverse. And there are keyboard shortcuts for all this stuff. You can see over here there's a keyboard shortcut, but we're just going to use the menu, inverse. And now what it does is it reverses the selection, so now my background is selected and not the coin, and I'm just going to hit delete. And there goes the background. Command D deselects, and now I've isolated my coin image from the background. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with the reverse. So let's name the original layer original. Our new layer will be reverse. And then we don't need a background layer for this. Let's see something. Yeah, we don't need a background layer for this because I'm going to end up dragging this reverse over onto the obverse image, so we're not going to bother with the background. So I'm going to do the same process here. I'm going to, in my marquee, elliptical marquee tool, I'm going to hold Option and Shift at the same time. I'm going to find the approximate center of this coin. I'm going to drag out from that center point. I'm going to now, if I need to, I'm pretty close here, but I'm going to hold the space bar and just align this with the edge and try to just find the edge of this. Actually, hey, I did a pretty close job here. Pretty close. All right, so I'm going to let go. Go to the select menu, choose inverse, hit delete, Command D to deselect, and my background disappeared. Okay, so I am going to go back to my obverse. I'm going to make my canvas size larger because I'm going to drag my reverse image over here. You know, before I do that, one thing I kind of forgot about is I forgot about straightening this image. Does this image need any straightening at all? You know, maybe it's not perfectly level, straight up and down. Let me just double check that. I'll go to the crop tool. Let's see, I think maybe the point that I'm going to use to level, or as a reference point, is the S in Islands and the E in Elizabeth. I'm going to hold the Command key, drag a line from the S to the E, and I think it's pretty level. I think it might have been leveled ahead of time. Let me check this one. I think maybe the bottom of the two should be level, so let me go ahead and click and drag a line the bottom of the two. That one's a little bit off, so level that out just a bit. Okay, so let's go back to our obverse image. I'm going to make the canvas size larger. So under the image menu, go to canvas size. I'm going to make this double the size, so 200%. I'm going to anchor the canvas to the left-hand side because I want to add that extra canvas to the right-hand side. Hit OK. There we go. So now I have a larger, a wider image that can accommodate my reverse. So I'm just going to drag this tab away so it becomes a floating window. Go to the Move tool. Make sure I hold the Shift key down. Click and drag right over my other image, and that comes in directly in the center. And then I'm going to drag it to the right. how far it's spaced away from the, how far the two halves, two sides of the coin are spaced from each other is kind of an aesthetic judgment. It's up to you. Then I'm going to crop this image because there's a little bit of extra space on the right. I'm just doing this by eye. I'm not measuring it. It looks pretty close. Double click, and there we go. So I have I've got a background layer here. Right now, this checkerboard indicates transparency. There's no pixel or no color information on the background. Let's say I want to make this background white. I'm going to hit Command A on my background layer. That selects all of the pixels on the layer. You can see the marching ants going around the edge. Go to Edit, Fill, choose white. Command D to deselect, and there I have a white, I've got a white background. Now maybe I want to make a black background too. So I'm going to just duplicate this background layer. Let's call this one background white. I'll call this one background black. And I'm going to hide my background white layer, select the background black layer, Command A to select all, go to Edit, Fill, choose black, and Command D to deselect, and now I have a black background, and I can toggle back and forth between these. So I could actually, from this single layered file, I could make a JPEG, one with a black background and one with a white background. Let me go ahead and do that. Actually, let's do a save as. Let's save this layered Photoshop file. I'll call it demo2. PSD. .psd preserves our layers. Let's take a look at the image size of this. It's already at 72, so that's good for web use. So let's make a JPEG. Save as. Choose JPEG. I'll call this black, because it has a black background. Now I'm going to turn on my white background, and let's make another JPEG, save as. Choose JPEG, and I will name this one white. Hit save. Okay, and if we go back to this folder, I've got I have two JPEGs, one with a black background and one with a white background. Okay, so let's go on to our next demo. I think we're pretty good on time. I know this goes, let's see, Eastern time, it's 4 o'clock. Mountain time, it's 2 o'clock. So I've got some time. I'm going to keep going. I'm gonna, we'll do one with some paper money. Maybe there's some paper money collectors out there, and I did promise that I would show you some paper money stuff. So let's see what we're going for here. Got a before and after. I've got 2 scans of a Confederate currency $50 bill, the obverse and the reverse. They were scanned in a flatbed scanner with a black, some black construction paper behind them. Because if I don't know if you've ever scanned paper money before, but if you just have a white behind the bill, and the scanner will make it look sort of transparent, so that you end up seeing the other side of the bill on the image, and it doesn't look quite right. So placing it on a black background will solve that problem. All right, so we're going to take these 2 separate scans, and we're going to composite those together into a single image with a black background. So let's open up our obverse and reverse. Okay, so we have the, here's the reverse and here's the obverse. And I want to show you, I mentioned that this was scanned on against some construction paper. And construction paper has quite a bit of, got kind of a rough texture, it's kind of fibrous. And you can see that here, it's not perfectly black. It's not very smooth or even. So what I want to do, well, let's say we want to separate this from a background. So for example, let's say we just want our background to be black, solid black, rather than seeing this texture back here. Because if we leave that texture and then we try to composite the obverse and the reverse together, you're going to see a seam where the texture doesn't align quite right. So that's why we need to make this black and get rid of that texture. So one thing about this node is that it's not cut by a machine. It's not a perfect rectangle. So we can't use, for example, we can't use the rectangular marquee tool very effectively if we want to separate the bill itself from the background, because it's not a perfect rectangle. So we could try, like the same with the ancient coins, we could use the magic wand tool, and we could try that. We could try to select these background pixels and delete them, and then fill it, then put a black background behind it. But let's see what happens if I click with the magic wand tool in here. That actually looks pretty good. There are places that it's not picking up. But one of the issues here is that there's just, I don't like the way the edge is. I don't think it's going to give a very good result as far as making the edge of the bill look smooth. If I hit delete, actually I'm jumping ahead a little bit. I actually need to, let me create a new layer. Let's do what we were doing before. Let's do original. Let's call this obverse. So let's get back to our system. And let me hide that original so that there's going to be some transparent pixels back there. Let me hit delete and Command D to deselect. I'm not happy with this edge. It's looking like maybe there's little lights being taken out of it or something like that. Maybe you can get away with doing that. Depends. I'm going to try a different method. Let me Command Z to undo that. So Command Z is undo. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up just painting out this background. I'm going to paint this black so that it's a solid black, and I'm going to do that manually, and I want to show you how to do that. So to save time, I'm only going to paint out the background on this obverse image. I've already done that on the reverse. So you can see that the difference here is that you don't see that pattern anymore. It's a perfectly solid black. That's what I would like to do on the obverse. So let me show you this technique. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to get into my, my brush tool, and I want to just make sure that my foreground color is black. So I haven't explained this to you yet, but at the bottom of the toolbar, there's a couple of little color swatches. There's a black color swatch and there's a white color swatch. The black looks like it's in front of the white. That means it's the foreground color, and the white is the background color. And we can toggle with this little crooked arrow here. We can toggle this back and forth, which means if white is the foreground color, then I can paint with white. And if black is the foreground color, I can paint with black. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Leave it on black, I mean. So let's see. All right, I'm going to paint directly. Again, I'm showing you some basic tools and techniques. So I'm going to show you just basically how to paint over the pixels on this layer. Again, you want to make sure that you're zoomed in enough so that you can see what you're doing. And you want to make sure you're aware of the foreground color is black, the pixel dimensions here, the width, diameter of the brush. I have it at 20. I have the hardness at 80%. That's probably pretty good. I could just start painting over this like this. If I get toward the edge, I have to be a little bit more careful. And honestly, I'm not too comfortable with that because you can see what's happening. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you can see that I'm going like, oh, you know, I'm kind of overlapping there, and I don't really like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do kind of a keyboard shortcut, which will make painting along this edge a little bit easier. I'm less likely to make some kind of a mistake. I'm going to, if I click with the brush, and then I hold the Shift key and I click in a different spot, what Photoshop does is it fills the distance between the two places that I clicked with the paint. So I basically have a straight line. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to just start painting here. So again, I'm holding the Shift key so that every time I click, hold the Shift key, I click again. Photoshop is filling in those pixels, so I don't have to be like pixel perfect. I'm letting Photoshop do some of the work for me. And I'm just being careful not to get too close to the, I'm trying not to overlap the edge of the bill so that I don't want to cut off any of this. I just want to get rid of the background. All right, this can seem like a tedious process, but honestly, it's not that difficult if you use this shortcut that I'm showing you, where you click, hold the Shift key, click again, and let Photoshop fill in those pixels for you. And I can go back and I can just get rid of these. And you can see I'm working fairly quickly. You can zoom out as I need to. Zoom back in. Zoom out a little bit. All right. So again, this is kind of a special case. It's a coin that a paper money note that was scanned on a flatbed scanner with not a very dark. It's a black construction paper, but it was reflective and it's got texture and fiber, so it's not really a very dark black, and there's some texture to it. And the note is irregularly cut. It was cut by hand. These Confederate notes are like that. So it's not something that is conducive to just using the rectangular marquee tool to cut this thing out. And I don't think that the magic wand works very well. I don't think that it gives us a clean edge when we use the magic wand. So I'm resorting to just painting this out, which is something that you could do. There are other tools in Photoshop, a little bit more advanced, called masks. And a mask would allow us to kind of mask this area out or paint it out or create a selection without actually changing the pixels on the layer. Because right now what I'm doing is I'm permanently, well, I could Command Z it, I could undo some of what I'm doing, but I'm permanently altering the pixels on this layer. But I think that's okay, just for the basics, it's okay. And I do have my original there in my layers panel. I've got my original that I could go back to. So in a way, this isn't really, I've got my original image that I can always go back to. Okay, so what I did on that is I if you've ever done painted a wall in a house, I cut in, I went around the edges, and now I'm just going to just do the outside. I don't have to be that precise. And how long did this take me? 5 minutes? 4 or 5 minutes? Not too long. All right, so there we have it. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to bring my reverse side over to this image. That means I've got to go ahead and make my canvas size larger. I'm going to add to the lower part of the canvas by 200%, anchoring to the top so that extra canvas appears below the current part of it. Uh-oh, what did I... Ooh, I did something wrong. Hold on. Canvas size. Width. Oh, height. Yes, I want height. That's what I want. We've been doing width up to this point. 200. Okay, there we go. Let me go ahead and make a layer for the background. Our new background is going to be black. Background. Let me just go ahead and make the background now. Select on the background layer. Command A to select all. Go to fill. Choose black. Command D. Deselects it. Drag my, I've got my reverse image. I dragged it away to become a floating window. I'm going to go to my move tool, hold the shift key, click and drag over my obverse image, and then position this like so. All right, what I think is this is a little bit tight. I would like a little bit more of a border around this. These look a little bit crowded. So let me go ahead and just make my canvas size a little bit bigger. Width and height percent, let's just go like 110% for width and height all the way around. And okay, now what that did is it, my black background, doesn't extend that far. So I'll click on my background layer again. I'll hit Command A to select all, go to Edit, Fill, Black Color, Command D, and now we have an image. Now that I have a little bit more room on my canvas, maybe I want to separate these a bit. Something like that. Crop this a little bit so the border is about even all the way around. All right, and there's my, my paper money composite. Let me go ahead and save this, save as. This is demo 3. Check out the image size. It's 72, so that's good for a JPEG. Let's just save a JPEG. Save as. Go to choose JPEG. Hit save. All right, and let's take a look at our JPEG. So there we have it. That's ready for the web. So it's getting a little bit late. I should ask, I could do another demo showing how to create kind of a special effect and a reflection, or I could take questions. Let me just show you this other thing. Is that, hello? I could show you this, but I think I don't want to go over. Do we need time for questions, don't we? Or can I do this one?
You have a few questions. How long will this one take?
How long will this one take?
Yeah, to do this.
Well, like Could take 5 minutes. I should be able to do it fairly quickly.
Do that, and then we'll go to questions.
Okay. Now, are you able to hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I'm having a hard time hearing you. Okay, let me do one more demo. Let me give it a shot. I'll try to do it within about 5 minutes. We're going to go back to the we'll go back to this Canadian coin. Let's just go ahead and open up the JPEG. No, wait, what are we going to do? Let's open up the PSD file. All right, so what I want to do is make kind of a gradiated background or gradated background that goes a little bit from black to gray, and then we'll put a reflection on this. So I need a little bit more canvas size to fit this reflection that I showed you. So let me make the canvas size bigger first of all. I'll add a little bit to the bottom. Well, let's just do like 150% the height. Let's go with the black background. I'm just going to, I hit select all, go to edit, fill. I'm on my background, black background layer. Change the whole thing to black. Let me use this gradient tool. So if I go to the gradient tool, by default, I have some choices here of what kind of gradients I could add. So the default one I've got is from black to white. So what it's doing is it's showing me, it's making a gradient that goes from the foreground color to the background color. Currently my foreground color is black and my background color is white. So if I was to click and drag with this gradient tool, like from the top to the bottom of my image, it's going to start with black. It's going to go through all the grays all the way to white. So, I mean, we could do something like this, but I don't think it looks too great. We could start our gradient down here so that the majority of the image is black and the gradient just affects the bottom or the lower part of the image. And so we could go from black to white like that. But I really would, instead of going all the way to white, I kind of just want it to be more subtle, to go to black, from black to gray. So I'm going to select my background color, which is white, and I'm just going to move this little like slider down to be more gray in our color picker. So now my gradient is going to go from black to gray. So let's just go ahead and that gradient there. That looks a little bit better to me. So again, if I start this all the way at the top and go all the way to the bottom, then the gradient is going to go farther up the image. And I want to make it more like it's the surface of like the reflective surface of a table or something like that. So I'm going to start my gradient down here. Okay. And that looks a little bit better. Maybe here. Okay. It's really kind of a matter of taste. You could experiment with this. And since we're short on time, I'm not going to do any more experimenting. We'll just let it be. For the obverse and the reverse, we're going to create a reflection below. So what I'm going to do is I am going to select both of these layers. So what I did is I clicked on one layer, held down the shift key, and clicked on the other layer, and that allows us to select both layers at the same time. And then I'm going up into this little layer options menu and choosing merge layers. So now they appear on the same layer. I'm going to duplicate that layer. And then what I'm going to do is rotate that layer so that it's rotated 180 degrees. Command T, which is transform. And I'm just going to drag this so that it's upside down. And then I am going to go to transform and flip horizontal. So it makes a mirror image. I'm going to drag this down. All right, and then what I'm going to do is put a transparency, or I'm going to reduce the opacity of this so it looks more like a reflection. So, I kind of like the more of a subtle effect. And we just want to make sure that this is touching. I don't want a gap between the reflection and the coin. So what I can do is use my arrow keys on my keyboard just to kind of nudge this up. So I've got a up, down, left, right arrow. I'm using the up arrow, and I'm just nudging this. I'm hitting the arrow key so that it just kind of nudges it into place. All right, and there we have it. So there's your reflection. I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to save this as a JPEG. All right, save. So let's just open the JPEG so we can see how it looks. All right, so there's the final image. So that really wasn't that, it didn't take that long. It was kind of a cool effect, and it really wasn't that difficult. Okay, so I think that's all I've got. I just wanted to take some questions, as long as we have time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. Real quick, I'm going to go ahead and launch the survey. Again, it's only 8 questions. So yeah, please answer it, and then while you can listen to Michael answering the questions.
Okay.
All right. So let me start and find the beginning. For those that missed it, this is recorded, and we will post it on our website in the future. And it will have the presentation of the slides and the presentation that Michael just did for us all in the recording, so you'll find it there. All right, so your first question is, do you have to use Lightroom as a standalone or conjunction with Photoshop?
I do not have a lot of experience in Lightroom, to be honest. I'm not a professional photographer. And so I don't really use Lightroom myself. I probably should. I don't think you need to use it in conjunction with Photoshop. I think you can do, basically you can organize your files in Lightroom. You can do some basic retouching. I really don't think, or let's say basic color correction is what I should say mostly. And if you're not doing anything more than that, I don't think that you need to use Photoshop in conjunction with it.
What kind of camera was used for the demo pics?
What kind of camera was used for the demo pics? I have a Canon. I don't even remember my own camera, but I have a Canon camera with a macro lens. I don't remember all of the specs. Now, if I went into Adobe Bridge, I could see the specs because it gives you that kind of, it gives you all that sort of stuff. So it's a Canon with a macro lens.
Which file format or formats would you recommend for print?
I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear you. It's kind of muffled. I don't know why.
Which file formats would you recommend for print?
For print, I recommend a TIFF file. I worked in print for a really long time, and that was the standard file format. So you can actually save, so if you're working in Photoshop, you can save a PSD file, which is the native format that preserves the layers, but you can also, a TIFF will also preserve the layers. So you can work in a layered TIFF if you want to, or you can save as a flattened TIFF. But I would say for print, a flattened TIFF, it's a smaller file size. There is a compression on a TIFF, so it should be smaller than a PSD file, but it's not lossy compression. So it's still a very high quality image. And so TIFF is the standard for print.
Which color mode would you use if you wanted to use it as a print and web image, or you aren't sure how it will be used?
So the digital cameras are going to shoot as RGB, So you're going to have an RGB image to start with, but you can convert it to CMYK. So I think that what I would probably do is I would have my RGB image that I'm working on, and I would save a version as a CMYK. You can have both. So you just save two different files.
After the presentation, would you be able to recommend some lighting options for the amateur numismatic photographer?
I am not, I really would rather not, I'm not a professional photographer. And I'll tell you that the first coin that I demoed, I did with a point and shoot camera with really not very a good lighting setup, like a very amateur setup, and it wasn't high res. And I actually took the numismatic photography course at the summer seminar from real photographers, and I got lighting techniques from them. And it just depends on what kind of coin that you're shooting. Different coins, like a proof coin, a proof modern coin, needs a different lighting setup than an ancient coin, maybe, or a coin in a slab. So it's really hard to say, to give like one general lighting setup. And I really would rather punt that kind of a question to a professional photographer, especially a numismatic photographer.
Great. What RGB profile are you using? sRGB, Adobe RGB, or another?
Oh boy, this is getting really technical. I am using whatever the default is, which I think is I think it's Adobe RGB, but honestly, I'd have to go and look, because I'm not messing with the color profiles. I'm using basically what the default is, because I don't really have a reason to use any other color profile.
We are getting close to time, but we can do a few more.
Yes.
Will the editing techniques that you've shown also work with scans of currency?
With what kind of currency?
Scans of currency?
Stands of currency.
Like probably scanned image.
Oh, scans of currency. Yeah. Sorry. Well, I think I just showed that. I showed I showed at least how to composite and to kind of remove a background. It would be the same. So if you're doing color correcting, it would be kind of the same thing. Every image is going to, you're going to want to, there's not like one way to, it just depends on the image, how far you go with color correcting or what specific adjustments you need to make. But yeah, the techniques that I showed should be able to work with currency as well, yeah.
Again, if you haven't finished the survey, please go ahead and do that now. That would be very helpful. What do you mean by a curves adjustment?
It's one of the adjustments that you can do in Photoshop. It's curves is one of the indicators of the distribution of light and dark on a photo. So again, this is very technical, and it's not something that I'm not in terms of like how it all works. It's very, it's more like computer programming stuff. But basically, you can adjust. It's one of the methods that you can use to adjust things like contrast and lightness and darkness within a photo. So again, it's very technical, and I'm probably not the right person to explain it. It's more of a photographer, yeah.
When taking pictures of coins, is it best to raise the coin off the surface? If so, what prop do you use to do so?
Again, this is a photography question, but I'll answer it. For me, and what I learned in my photography class is that it is best to raise it off the surface, because the surface is going to have dust and hairs and stuff, and no matter how how much you try to clean it off, there's going to be some kind of dust on there. And so in order to avoid that, if you raise the coin off the surface, the coin is in focus, the surface will be out of focus, and it'll just make a smoother background. So yeah, I would say I recommend raising the coin off of a surface.
Let's see, we're gonna do 2 more, and I'm gonna try
Okay.
and find some that aren't like so specific if I could. These are kind of specific here. Okay, I'll just pick one. It says, why not JPEG 2000? It's less glossy. I wonder if they meant glossy, and preserves more pixels.
Could be. Yep. I don't have, so yeah, it could be just different formats. I mean, that's probably right. I'd have to look into it. Could use JPEG 2000 if it's better, less lossy, yeah.
Okay, one last question. What's the option key in Microsoft?
The option key in Microsoft is an option. Is it Alt?
Probably Alt, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Alt.
Okay, awesome. Well, I thank you again, Michael, for your expertise. This was a really great presentation. I know I learned a lot, and I'm hoping everybody did too.
Thank you.
For those of you that may have missed pieces or want to go back and rewatch this, we are recording this, so we'll put it on our website probably in the next few days, if not the next week. So catch it there. Thanks again for joining us. We will have another presentation on Thursday on NPC Bootcamp with Fred Schwann, so please join us there. And let us know, one of the questions on the survey is if you want to do a presentation. If you are interested in doing a presentation for the ANA, please make sure you said yes to that presentation so I can contact you, and we'll get everybody set up, and we're starting presentations next year. So we'll have a few more this year, and then we'll start up again next year. So I appreciate everybody staying with us. And again, thank you, Michael, for everything, and wonderful job today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.